Hi Year 2. I hope you enjoyed listening to Akimbo and the Elephants. Now we're going to move on to a new story. It's called Akimbo and the Lions. Chapter 1. A Lion Problem. There is a place in Africa where the hills give way to great plains of grass. Zebra graze here and buffalo too. And if you are lucky, you may also see lions. And at the waterholes in the morning, there are other animals to be seen. There are giraffe, awkwardly bending their long necks to the surface of the water. Warthogs with their families, scurrying in to quench their thirst while nobody is looking. And many animals besides. Akimbo, who lived on the edge of the great game park, knew all the animals well and their ways. But now Akimbo was bored. His friends had gone away, and it seemed that nothing at all was happening in the game park. His father was too busy to help. He had just been made head ranger, and his day was so full of all sorts of pressing tasks that there was not much time left over for his son. Or so it seemed to Akimbo. Akimbo thought about building a tree house. There were plenty of suitable shady trees to choose from, but when he started to look for wood, he found that all the planks which were the right size were earmarked for something else. So he had to abandon the treehouse idea. Then, quite unexpectedly, his father announced over breakfast one morning that he was going to have to be away from home for a few days. "I'm going over to one of the farms in the south," he said. "There have been reports of lion attacks on cattle. They want us to come and deal with the problem." Akimbo listened carefully. Lion attacks. He stared down at the table, wondering whether his father would let him go with him. Sometimes he was allowed to go with the men when they went off into the bush on a routine trip, but he had never been permitted to help with anything quite like this. He watched his father, waiting for him to give more details, but the ranger just sipped at his mug of tea and said nothing more. Akimbo decided that he should ask him straight away. "May I come with you?" he said hesitantly. "I won't get in the way, I promise you." Akimbo's father frowned and shook his head. "I'm sorry, Akimbo," he said. "I'm going to have my hands full, and I just won't have time to look after you." "But I can look after myself now," Akimbo protested. "I won't be any trouble, I promise." Akimbo's father looked at his son. He enjoyed having him around when he had small jobs to perform, but an expedition to deal with murdering lions, that was different. And yet he had to admit that his son was bigger now, and he certainly knew how to keep out of trouble in the bush. "Well," he began doubtfully, "you won't get in the way, will you?" Akimbo leapt to his feet in delight. "Of course I won't," he said, "and I'm sure I'll be able to help." Said his father, still sounding a little unconvinced. "But I don't know about that. I suppose there's no harm in your coming with us." Akimbo could hardly contain his delight. The boredom which he had been feeling up to now had completely disappeared. He was going off in search of lions, the proudest and most dangerous animal in the bush. He had, of course, seen lions in the distance, and on one occasion they had surprised a sleeping lioness only a very short way away from them. But this sounded as if they were going to get even closer than that. He wondered if it would be as exciting as his last adventure. The tracking down of the ivory poachers and his saving of the elephants had been the most thrilling thing that had happened to him in his life. But it had also been one of the most frightening, and he was pleased when it was all over. They left early the next day, before the sun rose above the hills. The morning air was sharp and fresh, and the men rubbed their hands together to keep them warm as they waited for the truck to set off. Akimbo sat in the cab with his father, while the men perched in the back with their equipment. His mother had given him a flask of tea and some sandwiches for his breakfast, and as the truck set off along the bumpy road, Akimbo unwrapped his sandwiches and began to eat. As the sun came up, it painted the plains around them with gold. Flights of birds rose up from the lakes and treetops. Herds of zebra stared at the passing vehicle before stampeding off in a cloud of dust. An antelope and its tiny calf skittered in panic across the road in front of them. Akimbo had not slept well that night, as he was too excited by the prospect of the trip. Now, as it became hotter, he found himself dozing off, being woken from time to time by a bump in the road, but drifting back into sleep again. They stopped once or twice before they reached the farm. The men in the back got out, stretched their legs, and brewed up a pot of tea on a fire of brushwood. Then at last, just after noon, they saw the farm they were looking for, a cluster of distant buildings surrounded by trees. As the truck drew to a halt outside the farmhouse, the farm dogs barking loudly and defensively, the farmer came out onto the veranda of his house and waved a friendly greeting. Akimbo sat at the foot of his father's chair while the two men discussed the problem. "There have been 5 attacks now," said the farmer gravely. "All of them have happened within the last month." Akimbo's father nodded. "Tell me about them," he said. The farmer sighed. "I've lost 12 cattle," he said. "In each case it's happened at night. The lion has broken into the cattle pen and killed 1 or 2 beasts. He's dragged them out a bit, trying to get them out, but eventually he's given up and had his meal right there." "Has anybody seen it happen?" asked Akimbo's father. The farmer smiled. "I put a man on duty at the pen for a few nights, but when he heard the commotion, he decided to run back up here. I can't blame him, of course, but it means that he didn't see what happened. He said he thought there was only 1 lion." Akimbo's father thought for a while. "It's probably the same lion," he said. "You get one animal that can't be bothered to hunt for prey out in the bush, and it picks on a soft target." He paused for a few moments before continuing. "The trouble is that the only way to stop it is to shoot the lion or get it removed. You can't teach them new ways." "Do you think you'll be able to trap it?" the farmer asked, sounding rather doubtful. Akimbo's father laughed. "It may take us a few days," he said. "It may take us a week, but we'll certainly try. And I think that I can say it'll either catch us or we'll catch it." Akimbo swallowed hard. He knew that his father was half joking, but there would be danger whichever way one looked at it. Still, he had asked to come, and he was definitely not going to change his mind now.